So in today's video, we're going to be covering 6 unique bicep variations that you're probably not incorporating into your own workout. From a programming perspective, when considering smaller muscle groups, variety tends to be an extremely beneficial contributing factor to consider. When it comes to larger muscle groups, you tend to have a lot more potential when considering your ability to increase load and increase volume. But with smaller muscle groups, they just don't progress as rapidly. Understanding that, it makes sense to mix things up a little more frequently than you might on muscle groups such as your back or legs or chest. And this is where training can get pretty fun because you can start experimenting with some unique variations, and that's exactly what we're going to cover today. And considering variety when it comes to exercise selection for these smaller muscle groups will allow you to consistently apply adequate levels of stress from which you can recover from and adapt to. So what I find most enjoyable about considering variety of exercise selection on these smaller muscle groups is it allows you the opportunity to get quite creative. And what you realize is that doing the same thing over and over and over again isn't all that impactful. But by making the slightest adjustment, say in your grip positioning, or the diameter of your grip, or the implement that you're utilizing for a given exercise, or possibly the rep range or position of your body, or the way the weight is loaded on a bar. All of these different factors that you can manipulate, and even the slightest manipulations of those factors are incredibly impactful in A, how the exercise feels, and B, how stress is applied to the muscle group that you're targeting. So let's consider a traditional hammer curl. Often people just grab a set of dumbbells and they rock out, but what if we change the implement? By changing the implement and executing the exact same exercise, the application of stress is completely different. So I like mixing these up with a set of kettlebells, right? As you can see, the weight or the load placement on a kettlebell is very different than it would be on a hammer curl. The weight is positioned out front of your knuckles as opposed to directly above and below. So the movement is basically identical, but the intensity of the exercise is grossly different. To give you a bit of a comparison, with strict hammer curls, I can normally execute 8 to 12 reps per arm with the 45s to 50s, give or take. With kettlebells, I'd be hard pressed to do the same with 30s or 35s. So as you can imagine, the stress through the exercise and the intensity of the exercise is very much different. So another one of my favorites, a unique variation that's not often incorporated at the gym, is what's called the Z curl, or the Zotman curl. Starting with feet shoulder width apart and the dumbbells positioned like so, palms facing up to the ceiling, you're going to execute basically the epitome of a traditional dumbbell curl, up through the first half of the range of motion, but instead of controlling the dumbbells back down to a full extension in the arms, you're going to rotate the dumbbells and control down with a reverse curl to the starting position. And then you'll simply twist the palms and go through a traditional dumbbell curl, up through the first half of the range of motion and back to a reverse curl. This slight variation on a traditional dumbbell curl completely changes the feel of the exercise. You'll notice that your forearms get very fatigued quite rapidly, and the biceps are likely going to feel this considering DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness, for quite a few days. Not to mention the load that you use on this exercise will be much lower than it might otherwise be on a traditional dumbbell curl. Here's an example of a variation on a traditional barbell curl that grossly increases the intensity of the exercise and how much it prioritizes the biceps. So normally when doing a barbell curl, you're starting with a full extension, you're coming right up over the chest and then back down to a full extension in the arms. With a barbell drag curl, you're going to almost literally drag the barbell up your torso by driving the elbows back as you bend at the arms. So you're dragging right up, staying nice and close, tight to the body, right up to chest level, squeezing the biceps, and then right back down to a full extension in the arms. Literally making contact between the barbell and your torso throughout the majority of the lift and controlling back down through a full extension. Another approach I like to take to incorporate variety into secondary exercises is to introduce accommodating resistance in such a way that the execution of the rep itself is more intense in a position where it might normally be less intense. So for example, on a barbell curl, there's two positions throughout the range of motion that aren't all that challenging. When your arms are fully extended, not a lot of stress in the biceps. As well, when you reach the peak of the range of motion and your elbows are as flexed as they possibly can be, the intensity on the biceps also is not that great. So by strapping the barbell down with light tension bands, those bands are going to stretch through the range of motion, and once the barbell reaches that peak position in the rep, the bands will be applying a much greater degree of stress, whereas when I lower the barbell back down, that tension is actually going to release. So it looks kind of like this. Tension increases as I come up through the full range of motion, so now the tension is highest on the repetition. There's a lot of tension on my biceps, and then controlling back down to a full extension in the elbow before again executing the next repetition. Tension builds and controlling back down. Another variation I like to incorporate is the spider curl, and this is more variation on positioning when executing the exercise. So you will need an incline bench for this one, or if you can MacGyver up something that kind of mimics the incline bench press position. And what you're going to do is either get a set of dumbbells, an easy bar, or a straight bar, whatever you might have access to. You can even rotate through all three implements on this variation of position when considering execution. So what you're going to do is place your chest right up against the incline bench so that your head is over the end of the bench. Now from here, full extension in the arms, palms facing forward, and you're going to focus on keeping the upper part of the limb as static as possible and bending only at the elbows, coming right up through a full range of motion and then controlling back down to a full extension. And as is evident, it's very tough to use momentum on these curls because your torso is static, your upper limbs are static, and very quickly, the intensity and prioritization of the biceps compounds. As I mentioned, changing the way you load the bar also contributes to the variety of the exercise selection. So instead of placing the plates directly onto the sleeve of the barbell, I strap bands and then place the band through the plate. So now, when I do the curl, geez, that's awkward. The exercise itself feels much different. I now have to execute the repetition with much more control to manage the movement of the load that's taking place through the full range of motion on each repetition. If I move too fast, I will lose control and possibly I might lose some of the weights here. And by moving slower and controlling the repetition, comparatively, rep for rep, the muscles are under tension for a much greater period of time, increasing the intensity of the set. So I'm genuinely curious, of those 6 unique bicep variations, which ones have you done before? And of the ones you haven't done, which ones are you planning to try in your own training? And if you enjoyed the content, if you found it informative or useful in any way, make sure you follow or subscribe depending on which social media platform you might be seeing this on. And if you have any questions, make sure you send them my way because I regularly post content, and a lot of that content is based off the inquiries of individuals just like you.